Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service. This morning, as usually, we are going to practice the meditation few minutes. After meditation, Reverend Kusala is going to give a Dhamma talk. After that, question and answer. Then last item is chanting. So right now, Venerable Panyaloka is going to lead the meditation. Panyaloka.
We are going to practice the loving kindness meditation. Sit in a comfortable position. You can sit on a chair, bed. You can sit against a wall. Feel free to sit as you wish and reflect upon these loving kindness thoughts. Let's begin Metta Bhavana, loving kindness meditation, by closing our eyes. Relax your bodies. Relax your minds. May I be well and happy, peaceful and free from suffering. May no harm come to me. May no difficulties come to me. May no problems come to me. May I always find fulfillment. May I also have patience, courage, understanding, determination to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. May my teachers, Dharma teachers, may my parents, brothers and sisters, friends and relatives, may my enemies, all beings in the universe, be well and happy, peaceful and free from suffering. May no harm come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May no problems come to them. May they always find fulfillment. With these loving kindness thoughts, practice the silent meditation for a couple of minutes. And when you hear the bell, open your eyes. May the evil, negativity, sickness, and death loosen their grip and happiness be restored soon in the world. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Honorable Panaloka. Now time for the Dhamma talk. Today our speaker, Kusala, I think he's ready to give a Dhamma talk. Kusala, you there?
Kusala, there's no sound.
Kusala, there are no sound.
Still no sound, Reverend Kusala.
There you are. We can. Oh no, sorry, that wasn't Kusala. Sorry.
Yeah, you know.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, you can. Okay.
Yes.
I needed to unplug something. That's perfect. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about Buddhist-Catholic dialogue, which has been going on since 1989. And let me get my picture here. And view. Okay. Speaker view. Full gallery. Gallery view. Okay, there we go. Modern technology. So the Buddhist-Catholic dialogue has been going on since 1989. I'm going to read just a paragraph of some of the background before I start to talk about my experience with it and what I've come to understand. Okay, in 1969, the Catholic Archdiocese of Los Angeles with other religious communities founded the Interreligious Council of Southern California. In 1971, Buddhist communities joined. In 1974, the Archdiocese formed the Commission of Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs to coordinate and expedite its relations with other religious communities. Through the Commission and the Council of Interreligious Affairs, one-on-one exchanges began between Catholics and Buddhists. Some highlights of these exchanges included the 15th anniversary celebration of Nostra Aetate in 1980, the 20th anniversary in 1985, the 1986 Los Angeles observance of the Assisi World Peace Day, and the multi-religious celebration of the 1987 visit of Pope John Paul II in Little Tokyo. Nostra Aetate alive. This history of cooperation laid the foundation for the Los Angeles Buddhist-Catholic dialogue, which began February 16, 1989. Now, one of the reasons it's important to IBMC is that Dr. Ratnasara, who was living here at the time, and Monsignor Royal Vatican were the founders of the LA Buddhist Catholic Dialogue. And Reverend Karuna was also very much a part of it. And they worked hard to initiate the first meeting, and every month after that, there was another meeting. The meetings would meet in a Catholic church 1 month and a Buddhist temple or center another month. And it would go back and forth, back and forth. And they would have different topics that they would talk about and get the difference between the Buddhist viewpoint and the Catholic viewpoint. So in the early 90s, Dr. Ratnasara invited me to tag along. I wasn't a monk yet. I was just an interested layperson. and was curious what Catholics and Buddhists would talk about. So I went along and learned a whole lot of stuff that I had no clue even existed in the world. I also learned that the Catholics, for the most part, are very well educated. They have master's degrees, they have PhD degrees, and apparently you have to be really intelligent to talk about God. So for the Buddhists, we were also very intelligent, but we had a strong practice and learned a lot from the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, that didn't necessarily had much to do with God or Christianity, seeing as Buddhism was a little earlier than the Christians. So one of my favorite topics was the Holy Ghost. And of course, today is Easter. So it's a very Christian holiday and a wonderful holiday for them. And the Catholics went into a long, lengthy explanation of what the Holy Ghost was. And then Dr. Ratnasara responded with, well, you know, we don't have really any Holy Ghosts. All the ghosts that we have are rascals and give us a hard time. And I just love that response because it sort of brought everything back down to earth and in an everyday way, looking at what it meant to have faith and belief, but also an understanding of the challenges we all face every day. So I continued to go and I continued to learn and I continued to read. And one of the things I found with Buddhist-Catholic dialogue is it's not so much designed for you to learn about Catholicism, in my case, but it was designed for me to learn more about my Buddhist background and philosophy. And the idea was not to defend Buddhism in any way, but simply to define Buddhism as being a bit different and a unique way of looking at the world. So in that practice that I had, in that understanding that I had, I learned so much about Buddhism because I went to a Buddhist-Catholic dialogue. Now we're going to fast forward to 2001. I was ordained in 94 as a novice and 96 as a fully ordained monk. And in 2001, they were having a conference in Indiana at a convent called Benedict's Dharma. And this was the rule of Saint Benedict according to 4 Buddhists who wrote essays on the rule of Saint Benedict from a Buddhist perspective. And it's actually still available as used copies on Amazon, Benedict's Dharma. So it was 2001, and it was shortly after the attack on the trade centers in New York. So nobody wanted to take a plane. They just, I'm not flying, they said. I'm not going to get out there and fly. And then they asked me, well, Kusala, would you be interested in coming to our conference? And I said, yeah, that sounds great, you know, and I don't mind flying. I don't think anything's going to happen. So I got on the plane and had a wonderful flight to Indiana. And I started to meet a whole lot of people who were part of monastic interreligious dialogue, MID, monastic interreligious dialogue. So this was a national organization of Buddhist monastics and Catholic monastics who would come together and have conferences. And this was one of the first ones. And I just got lucky enough to be invited, and because nobody else wanted to go. And so that's how the monastic interreligious dialogue started for me. I have since been to Monks in the West, and also the monastic interreligious dialogue, which we've had 4 now, I think, 3 or 4. I have a whole webpage about all this. First time I ever went to Gethsemane. First time I ever saw Thomas Merton's grave. First time I ever really talked to some monastic Catholics. Some of the thoughts that I have about, or the memories I have, is I was in And we were there for a conference, and I couldn't figure out where the water bottles were. I said, do you guys have any water here? He said, oh yeah, we have plenty. I said, but where are the plastic bottles? You know, in LA, they always have plastic bottles. Well, it's a little different here, they said. In Gethsemane, we don't have plastic bottles. We have glasses, and you fill the glass up with water. And I thought to myself, what a concept that is, that they actually use glasses to drink water. And so then I asked what the meal was going to be that day, and they explained that for the past 10 years, they have been vegetarian. And so the meal was vegetarian meal. And I thought, wow, this is really amazing that they're so far ahead of some of the other religious centers that I have visited. They also have an extremely difficult practice of prayer. They get up like 3 o'clock in the morning for the first prayer, and they do 5 prayers every day. And in between the prayers, they work and study. So I couldn't understand why they had to do so many prayers. Why are you guys praying 5 times a day? What do you expect to accomplish? And this was the answer I got, which was just profound. They said, well, you know, all over the world, there are people praying. And so what we want them to know is that in their prayer, we're with them. We're praying with them. So they're never alone. They always have other people praying with them. And I'm going, wow, that is so cool. So a Buddhist could perhaps look at it in this way. Meditation is also a form of reflection. And when we're meditating, we never meditate alone. There's always somebody in the world who is meditating at the same time. And so forming this union with people we don't know really allows us to practice in a much more skillful way. Now, we had the first Monks in the West conference at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. And I had never been to the City of 10,000 Buddhas. It's in Ukiah, California. And it's the old California mental hospital that the City of 10,000 Buddhas turned into a Buddhist center, monastery. And I thought to myself, isn't that just the way life works? We have a mental health center that has been turned into a Buddhist center, and everybody is now striving for perfect mental health. So it just continues. It's a big place. It's a wonderful place. And in having the first Monks in the West conference, we had 15 Catholic monks and 15 Buddhist monks. Now, there's also nuns in the West where they have Catholic nuns and Buddhist nuns, and Reverend Karuna went to a couple of those. I went to one of them to take pictures, but I didn't get to stay or even have lunch. So it's a closed system. It's by invitation only. And again, there are topics and sharing and just being with each other. And one of the things that I came to understand was that the Buddhists and the Catholics have the monastic tradition in common, that they're single and not married, and they live in a community. And I think that's what differentiates us from perhaps the Protestants, who have a more open system, and oftentimes marriage and children and the church is where you work, not necessarily where you live. So the Catholics and Buddhists have a lot in common when it comes to lifestyle, but also more than you might think when it comes to philosophy. Now, I wrote a little something that I'd like to read to you after the first conference, that I had a lot of misgivings going to the first conference, thinking that, well, you know, am I going to be ready for it? Am I going to be able to speak with them in an intelligent way? Will they understand enough Buddhism that I won't have to interpret for them? And of course, none of that fear ever turned out to be anything other than just thoughts. So this was the first night. This is October of 2004, the first Monks in the West conference, 15 Catholic Buddhists, 15 Catholics and 15 Buddhists. And I wrote, I found myself on Interstate 5, zooming along at 75 miles an hour, sun shining with light traffic, headed for the city of 10,000 Buddhas. The first Monks in the West conference was about to take place, and I'd been invited to participate. Monastic men from the Catholic and Buddhist traditions gathering to share training and inner life for 3 days. We shared our first meal Monday evening, a wonderful array of Chinese food made especially for us. As we sat and talked, I felt a kinship with my fellow monks. For many different reasons, we had renounced mainstream life for the monk's life. For some reasons, they were secular. For others, they were spiritual. Some came from outer life. Some came from inner life. Some of us were chosen, and others made the choice. It was a great way to launch the conference, getting to know each other over a meal of Chinese noodles and tofu. Tuesday morning, we gathered early for meditation. I had a chance to shave and shower afterwards and found breakfast waiting for me in the little cafe at the 10,000 Buddhas. The morning meal consisted of hot rice gruel, tea and coffee, and a variety of delicious Chinese food. As I drank my morning coffee, I noticed there seemed to be a problem. A couple of the Catholic monks were talking to a Chinese nun. I couldn't make it out. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but they seemed to be a certain urgency in their body language. I wondered, what could possibly be wrong? We had our main afternoon meal with the larger City of 10,000 Buddhist community and gathered again at the cafe for supper. I noticed a few of the Catholic monks looking at the food table with a sense of relief. What had our hosts forgotten to offer them? Was it some kind of obscure Catholic dietary thing? I moved across the room towards the food line in a slow and unassuming way. And there on the end of the table lay 2 loaves of bread and a large jar of peanut butter. As each Catholic and Buddhist monk moved through the food line that evening, one by one, they stopped in front of the peanut butter and made a peanut butter sandwich. Our plates were overflowing with noodles and rice, green beans and tofu, and peanut butter sandwiches. It wasn't a Catholic thing at all. It was a monk thing. Men like peanut butter. It's a comfort food. I spread the peanut butter on white bread that evening and looked around and felt a deep connection to every man there. Common ground had been discovered in the food line. We had gathered not as monastic men, but as men with monastic lifestyles. I felt confident now, although religious differences may come up, we could always reconnect in that special monk way around the peanut butter jar. So, as you see, certain things are really important that seem so ordinary and everyday. And yet, when you strip away all the distractions that we have in everyday secular life and get into sort of a monastic mindset, we start to see that certain things are really important. And I would have never had so many insights if I hadn't become part of the Buddhist-Catholic dialogue. It still goes on today. They meet every month, once in a Catholic center and once in a Buddhist center. And they're still talking about certain aspects of Buddhism and Catholicism, but also the greater world problems that we're facing with, the pandemic and politics and all the things that we like to talk about and don't think they're very spiritual. But there's a spirituality in everything that the Buddhists and Catholics do, even in everyday life. So from an invitation that came out of 2001 and the problems in New York, to just recently going back to Gethsemane for another conference, it's been a remarkable journey of interfaith and interreligion. And I continue to learn from it and continue to post about it. So I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask or any comments they would like to make. And I'll just look for hands going up, and so far, nobody has anything to say. Okay, there we go. John, how you doing?
Hey, Kusala. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Your hair looks good, John.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So the lesson that you realized was that peanut butter is an important thing for Catholics? I mean, not the lesson, but that was the thing that the commotion was about?
Important thing for men.
For men. Catholic men?
Buddhist men. All men.
Oh, Buddhist
Every
men.
man.
Okay. Okay.
Men like peanut butter.
Is there a tradition, or they just wanted peanut butter?
I don't know if the Catholics have a tradition of peanut butter, but
Okay.
it tends to be a comfort food. And they missed it at the lunch and found it at the dinner. So everybody was a little more comfortable after they were able to get their peanut butter on white bread.
Okay.
And I thought, what a great way of looking at it, you know, because something as insignificant as peanut butter turned out to be problematic when it wasn't there.
Right.
You know, so it's not Catholic men, it's just all men and women too. But you know, if you go to a single guy's apartment and look in the cupboard, they may have nothing but a jar of peanut butter.
Right.
Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Kusala.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Nick, you can ask your question, Nick.
Okay, Nick, how are you?
Namaste.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for the Dharma talk. I'm grateful that I get to hear you today. And thanks for the reminder. It's very timely that I have more in common with Catholics than I think. I'm also a vegetarian, and I love a glass of water, and peanut butter is the staff of life. But I got to watch out. There's a lot of sugar in peanut butter, you know. My wife also loves peanut butter, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I'm a recovering Catholic, and left when I was like 15, and I've been practicing Buddhism since my early 20s, and I'm very happy with my practice. I'm at peace with my practice. It's difficult sometimes. It's been difficult this past week, but I'm happy with my path, and I live with my 82-year-old mother, who is a pretty serious Catholic, kind of like the Spanish cave tradition, you know, St. John of the Cross and all of these. And so she's very serious, and she's an academic. And we're very alike in that we both think we're right. And it's difficult because I think in her tradition, I think in the Catholic tradition, they really want to convert. I think there's a lot of identity in converting others, and I have I've never wanted to convert anybody to Buddhism. So is there something I can do when we're sitting, just this morning, we're sitting and talking, and it's difficult. There's a lot of suffering going on. And I'm just wondering how, instead of me getting a resentment, which is kind of what naturally ends up happening after a good half hour of being preached to, I'd get a resentment and recoil. But is there a way that I can engage in that kind of dialogue without becoming like confrontational? Or is there something that you can suggest? You seem to have you've been able to bridge the two. So I'd be grateful for anything. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the secret is not to be the victim, number one. And what they're trying to do is save you. You know, if they can convert you, they're saving you from eternal damnation. So it's a worthy goal, to say the least. And of course, today being Easter, this is when Jesus arose from the grave and went to heaven to be with his Father. At least that's the story as I understand it. And for a Buddhist, the thing that we find remarkable about the Buddha is once he died, he never came back. We never saw him again. We heard that he was in nirvana, but there's no real good description of what nirvana is, but we know it's not connected to earth in any particular way. So, and when we, proselytize, when the Buddhists proselytize, they're very subtle. It's really hard to pick up on it. But imagine a meditation center in downtown Los Angeles, and the front door is open, and there's incense burning, and it's wafting through the air to the sidewalk. And that's pretty much the strongest we get when we try to proselytize. It's really hard to talk people into becoming a Buddhist. Let me tell you about suffering. That's our first goal, to explain all the ins and outs of suffering. And if they're still listening after a half hour of why they suffer, then we say, but we can also tell you how not to suffer. And that's really good to hear when you finally realize that you're suffering. But a lot of people don't understand what Buddhist suffering is, and so they don't think they are. And we come off as being a little odd, to say the least. So when I speak to the Catholics, I listen to them, and I want to feel that they are trying to make my life better. And as a bodhisattva, the bodhisattva ideal of Buddhism is to be of service and to be skillful and to be kind to people that you come in contact with. So as you're listening to the Catholics try to convert you, think of yourself as being a kind bodhisattva. And you understand what they're saying. You realize quietly that it doesn't pertain to you, but it makes them feel better. It makes them feel like they're actually doing something in their religion that will make a difference in the world. And then thank them. And if they want to pray for you afterwards, thank them for that too. We can always accept prayers, whether we believe in prayer or not. It allows them to feel proactive, and it allows us to get a little bit more merit, and maybe prayer works and we'll feel better after all anyway. So I think the idea is to be kind. And when you get into the level of monastic Catholicism and you start speaking to the monks, what you're listening to are like a thesis, a PhD thesis that they wrote 2 years ago, and they want to share it with you. And I'm going, what the hell? But I sit there and listen, and every now and then I pick up some of the stuff that they're talking about, and yeah, that's great, that's wonderful, and thank them for sharing. And then when I talk, it's a little more basic, not quite as lofty as the PhD. And mine is like, yeah, we practice so we don't have to suffer anymore. We're getting tired of suffering. And the Catholics go, yeah, suffering, yeah, okay, got it. But we've had this wonderful communication because, number one, Nostra Aetate, which is when the Catholics said other religions are okay and other religions are valid. And that opened up a lot of dialogue between the other religions. The monastic interreligious dialogue not only speaks with Buddhists, but they speak with the Hindus, and they speak with the Muslims, and they speak with the Jews, I think. I'm not sure, but definitely the Hindus and some of the Catholics have become Hindu saints, or not saints, but Hindu practitioners, and vice versa. So it's fascinating, this exchange, this cultural exchange, as well as this religious exchange, and it only makes everybody better. And that's a good thing. That's how I look at it. Is that helpful, Nick?
Very much. So, thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Next, Benjamin, you can ask your question.
Hello, thank you for the Dharma talk today. Kusala. I really enjoyed it. My question is more broad than today's topic. I hope that it's relevant. My question is, and actually I come from a Christian background originally, so this can kind of apply to multiple religions, but especially in the Buddhist tradition, I want to ask about the purpose of praying for something that your worldview almost makes impossible. Like when we pray, may no difficulties come to me, may no harm come to me, and we are praying these things for ourselves or for others. My question is, if we know that difficulties are inevitable, we know that pain is inevitable, maybe not suffering, but pain and discomfort. It seems strange to me to like, I understand the desire for the well-being of others and also the desire for the well-being of myself, but sometimes it seems like we are meditating on things or praying for things that we also say are impossible because they're so intrinsic to existence. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that in Buddhism, that the bodhisattvas are waiting until all beings have achieved nirvana, and then the bodhisattvas will accept their nirvana. Now, logically, if you look at that, every year more and more people are suffering. It's never less and less, and more people are being born, you know, and then more and more people are dying. So samsara is where birth and death occurs, and right now we're 7 billion plus, and everyone is suffering. And the bodhisattva goes out and says, well, I'm going to help all beings end their suffering. And what an amazing optimistic view that is. So we all know the reason we recite that, number one, is we all know that it's inevitable. We will suffer. We will face challenges that we can't overcome. We will fail. All these things will go on. But the idea is not that they don't keep coming. The idea is not to stop them, because that's the world we live in. You can't stop them. The idea is to have a practice that's so deep, you can come to a place of acceptance with the way things are, with how bad things are. You know, you go into the store and they're all out of chocolate cake, you know, but they have strawberry cake. And you go, oh, the suffering of not having chocolate cake. Well, if you're at a level of acceptance, you can say, but you know what? The strawberry cake is probably going to be okay and satisfy those desires that I have for cake. And if I keep practicing, one day I won't have any desires for cake at all. And won't that be wonderful? Then I'll never be disappointed again when it comes to cake. And then we go into all the other stuff in our life, you know, and so we have preferences, we have choices, we think we know how things are supposed to be. We know how we want things to be because we're human and we've gone to school and people have told us what's good and what's bad. And our family has sort of programmed us to go in a certain direction and really go after the stuff that makes you feel good or successful or happy and all the other stuff. So the Buddhist goes, yeah, you know, that stuff's all fine and well while it's happening, but it doesn't happen often enough and it doesn't last long enough. And so I'm ultimately going to be disappointed in anything that I want to stay the same. And what I need to do is figure out how to get into the flow and allow things to come and go without grasping or clutching or holding on to. How can I do that? And so this may I be happy, peaceful, and free from suffering is may I find a place of acceptance with all this stuff that's not as good as I wish it was. And will that not hurt my life in any, you know, special way that I receive it and I let it go, and I receive it and I let it go, and I don't clutch and I don't cling and I don't wish it was different. Can I receive it and let it go? And that's what the Buddhist is really, I think, ahead of the curve. Is we're not seeking an ultimate heaven realm where everything is perfect. We're seeking a state of mind, nirvana. We're seeking a state of mind where things are just the way they're supposed to be, and it's okay. Now that's a profound, overly simplistic statement to look at life and say, you know, it's just the way it's supposed to be, but I can't see it yet. My life is perfect, but it doesn't feel like that. So you get to that part in your practice and you go, okay, I'm starting to see that my life is just the way it's supposed to be. But still there's so much suffering in the world. So what does that mean I need to do? That means you need to know that the world is just the way it's supposed to be, and yet people don't want to suffer. So as a Buddhist, we look at the world and go, yeah, it couldn't be any different than it is, but I can help people reduce and ultimately end their suffering if I give them techniques to work on and allow them to change their mind, to change the way they experience the world. So rather than changing the world, we just change our mind. It's a much easier task. If you want to change the world, you don't live long enough. We only live, if we're lucky, 80 years, and oftentimes less. And in 80 years, it's hard to change anything, even yourself. So you get 1,000 people together, and yeah, maybe we can change something temporarily and make it better temporarily. But then because of impermanence and change, that doesn't last long enough. And it goes back or goes into something new, and we're not happy and we're dissatisfied and we feel that suffering again. And so you go, okay, I need to really work on myself first. And then I need to share with people what I did, not what they should do. We never go out and say, you should do this, you should do that. Though people do that all the time. But as a Buddhist practitioner, if somebody says, how do you suffer less, Kusala? I say to them, let me tell you what I do. Now, and blah, blah, blah. I never say, this is what you need to do and you'll suffer less. This is what I do. And some of the stuff works for me and some of the stuff doesn't work for me. And some of the stuff that doesn't work for me might work for you because you're not me, you're different. You've got karma, your karma is different than mine. And so we go through the world reducing our own suffering, helping others reduce their suffering by sharing with them what we do when they ask. And if they don't ask, we don't say anything. And then we look at the world and see its perfection. Even though people come into the world to die, that's why they're born. They're born to die. And you go, whoa, man. But in Buddhism, they're not telling us, you never have to die. We're going to teach you the road to immortality. We never go there. What we're talking about is we're going to teach you how not to be reborn again. Because the problem with your life is you were born and you're suffering, and don't blame your parents because they didn't want to have you in the first place. They just wanted to have a pleasurable evening and a little wine. And then you showed up and you go, whoa, man, okay. So how many thousands of lifetimes have we all lived already? How many thousands of lifetimes have we been born and died and buried our parents and cried over the pets that didn't last longer than 10 years? How many lifetimes? And so the Buddhist says, okay, the Catholics get to go to heaven and they get to meet all their relatives and dogs again. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I want to meet all my relatives and dogs again. Maybe that's not the answer either. But we have nirvana. And before nirvana, we have enlightenment. And that enlightenment allows us to see the interconnection and interdependence of all phenomena and see how we're connected and perhaps see how we might be of service or we might be skillful in reducing suffering in ourselves and others. So it's an amazing journey. It's an amazing path. And all of us today who are looking at this screen have somehow found their way to Buddhism, or at least found their way to Buddhism enough to listen to some guy talk about it. And you go, wow. And not only that, some guy talk about it on Easter. Come on. What does that mean? It must have some significance. So I hope that wasn't too lengthy. I hope that gave you some ideas of maybe how to approach things differently.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Benjamin.
People want to listen to you, Kusala, because you impart the Dharma with such humor. It makes it easy to consume. It makes it easy to bring into their life. And I was wondering, you've been doing this Catholic Buddhist dialogue for 20 some years now, as long as I've known you. And I'm curious, what have the Catholics found out about Buddhism that surprised them?
I would say what the Catholics found out is Buddhism is not a threat. I think that's how they feel.
Like, you can't teach yoga in Southern schools because they think that's proselytizing for Buddhism and luring people away from the road of Christ. I mean, you can't teach yoga in these schools because of that. So some Christian communities, maybe not the Catholic community, but some Christian community, it's a threat. Yoga is a threat because it will show people how to be good within themselves, or lure them away to Eastern religions.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. A lot of people just look at yoga as exercise and stretching.
Wow.
They don't really get into the religious aspects. But I've been told that in Georgia, there is a yoga studio called the Sun Yoga Studio. And they spell sun, S-O-N.
Wow.
So go figure. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Selwyn, a last question for the Selwyn.
Okay.
Hi, Reverend Kusala.
How are you?
It's good to see you. Good. You don't have to answer this in full, but and I may be simplifying the concepts, but how do Buddhists and Catholics reconcile salvation, which is a Catholic concept, and liberation, which is a Buddhist concept? Because a lot of Catholics do salvation through suffering. You know, like that's why a lot of people say recovering Catholic, because we like to play the victim. And liberation, which is the cessation from suffering. So two different ways to go about it, I guess. How does the conversation look, has gone like?
Yeah, well, people, the Catholics have asked, you know, does Buddhism have salvation? And I say, absolutely, yes, we do. And what are we being saved from? We're being saved from suffering. So, okay, so the Catholics go, okay. I don't know if that's really salvation, but it sounds okay. You know, so we're working on being saved from our suffering. And not necessarily the suffering of others. It's just our own suffering. Because everybody suffers in their own special way. The Catholics suffer like this, and the Hindus suffer like that, and the Buddhists suffer like that. But we all have that human connection. We're all interconnected and interrelated in a very specific way. So we are working on salvation as well, but just a little different take on it. And so I understand what they're saying, and sometimes they understand what I'm saying. But see, you know, it's just words, you know, that's the deal. A lot of times before we started our Buddhist-Catholic dialogue, we would define the words we're about to use. So both sides of the table would understand what the words meant to the Catholics and to the Buddhists, and then go into dialogue. And what you found, because of a religious perspective, is that oftentimes the words were looked at to mean something other than what was intended. And so to define your dialogue is really important. So salvation, same word, different goals, different attitude, different idea. But that's the fun of going into dialogue, is striving to have some level of real communication. And it is so difficult because people don't hear what you're saying. They hear what you're saying through their filters. They're hearing what they already know. And you go, okay, I understand. So when I go to a high school to give an hour-and-a-half presentation, most of the time I'm just talking about certain words and defining them for the students and giving them a context in which to hear what I'm talking about and hopefully understand what I'm talking about. But then you have to say to yourself, if you're in the Zen school, okay, the words are simply a finger pointing. It's not the thing, it's the finger pointing at the thing. And so how can you talk about the thing if there are no words to describe it? So the whole idea of dialogue is just fascinating to me, and become even more so when you have such educated people, excluding myself, such educated people sitting down to have a heart-to-heart, mind-to-mind discussion about some esoteric aspect of one religion or the other, and come to some incomplete understanding of what was spoken about. And finally, after an hour and a half or 2 hours of dialogue, it's time for lunch, and they see the peanut butter and everything is okay. So there you go. Did that make sense, Sylvan?
It did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Kusala. I think time is running out. Thank you again for everybody. And I want to mention few things. Next Sunday, April 11, Chandana Bhikshu is going to give a Dhamma talk. Then after that, third Sunday, April 18th, Sanata Vihari, Theravada monks, American, Mexican Theravada monks, Sanata Vihari is going to give a Dhamma talk. And the last Sunday, April 25, I believe, I was thinking to give a Subodha. Subodha, are you there?
Yes, I am, Bante.
Can you give the talk last Sunday of the April?
Yes, I'd be glad to.
All right, thank you, Subodha. Then I want to mention again something, the month of the May. We are thinking to do the Vesak celebration, which is Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and passing away. We call Vesak. We going to celebrate in IBMC May 23rd. First, second, third, fourth Sunday, May 23rd. We're going to give it, we are not yet confirmed. We're still thinking. We don't know. We will confirm maybe end of the April, but we are thinking 23rd of the May, going to do that Vesak celebration, maybe outside, because we don't have that much members, I believe, and we're going to give a Dhamma talk, the little Dhamma talk, and the Sangha Dhan for our monks, and the lunch for the lay people. Also, keep in your mind, if you feel to come, you can come and join. But again, not yet confirmed. We are still thinking and planning. That's the announcement today. And we're going to chant page 4 and page 10. So thank you again for everybody. Thanks all the monks and Ashan, who's doing our technical work. So thank you again for everybody. We're going to chant right now. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Deluding passions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. Dharma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all.
Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and the sick find health relief.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you again for everybody. By the power of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, you will be well, happy and peaceful. Thanks again.